How you like me now? How you like me now? What's up, guys? Mr. Fox is here, and today we are into the Gloat to another exciting, somewhat of a semi-episode here. I wouldn't say exciting today, as the Gloat podcast. Today, I'm going to shoot a short video here for a new podcast today, as ever since 3 days ago, since with all the craziness going on, there's actually a few other pro fights that I completely forgot. And we're going to get to that sooner than later as we speak. But here's some of the information that we're going to be surprised today as recording this. Reports state that Noel Mikhailian, WBC Cruiserweight Champion, is almost going to be forced to strip his title if he actually fights against Jai Opetaia, which is what the CEO of WBC, Mauricio Suleiman, said. Believing because Jai Opetaia becoming Zuffa champion, and that's Dana White's promotion, and the Zuffa championship isn't much of a champion because it's its own promotion. So it believes that they do believe that if he doesn't fight David Benavidez, then he might strip the title. Where's the WBC title going to be stripped? Well, they might give the title to WBC interim champion Mikhail Cieslak, who is a 28-2 fighter, but 37 years old, not in his prime, but he is the interim champion after all. They do believe the Canadian fighter, who was actually somewhat of a bridgeweight title fighter, named Ryan Rositsky, could actually take the belt. But again, it would actually make no sense if they would even give that to David Benavidez, because he's not ranked in the WBC. Why? Because he's WBA and WBO champion. So why would you even give away a belt to a guy that's not ranked, even though he's already a champion in two organizations? And by the way, even the IBF belt being vacated and no one is on the line for it as we speak, with Chris Billum-Smith and Vidal Riley, who are ranked 2-1 or 3-2, because number one in the IBF is vacant. I really don't know. I really can't answer for any of the questionable doubts here. But again, it would actually make things a lot interesting as we speak. By the way, we also have other reports here. Jake Paul Promotion has released out his 5th MVP promotion this year, which will be released on August the 8th. August the 8th, live in Orlando, Florida, which is going to be the site of the same exact show, which will happen in 11 days from now, which is the build-up for the other title fights, as Chernurka Johnson will defend her undisputed bantamweight belts against Dina Thorslund. Which I will say this, I've said this before and I'll say it again, even though Dina Thorslund is still ranked number 1 in the bantamweight, which makes zero sense because her last fight in January the 31st was for the interim WBC World Featherweight Championship, and she won that belt easily, which means she should be ranked in the featherweight. So why is she ranked back to the bantamweight, and why has she been staying in the bantamweight after that last win? Again, doesn't make sense. She's boxed for 11 years in her career, and I do see Dina Thorslund being the winner of this fight. It was fun while it lasted, seeing Chernurka Johnson hold on to the titles. It's not like how Chernurka Johnson actually been in a situation where she dresses up in these skimpy bathing suits and go to the weigh-ins and become herself, which does entertain the crowd, and being undisputed like that is pretty entertaining. It's fun while it lasted, so if she doesn't win this fight, and if Dina Thorslund wins back her titles, then it's worth it, depending on how Chernurka Johnson lost the fight. But it will be an interesting fight, nevertheless, because Dina Thorslund was ranked number 1 pound for pound back in the end of 2024 until she retired because she had a pregnant for a second child, so I really can't say much about this. Again, it's not like how Ellie Brooke and a bunch of other boxers in the Misfits boxing world in 2023 and 2024 created a tournament, and all you see is a bunch of these social media females and broads with these skimpy wearing thongs, and all they're doing is losing fights from women like Daniela Helmsley and many other females that were also in the division. I have to go back and look up the names of the tournaments, but again, a lot of them just could not box and they couldn't even win a single fight. And it is upsetting that females that are so attractive with a pretty face cannot fight. And then you have girls like Ellie Scottney, former super bantamweight undisputed championship, with this ugly mug of a woman, almost like she was born inside a trash can with the face she has, is undisputed. It stinks to see that type of it, and it makes you wonder why there's not a lot of fans that watch boxing because of that. So it is a bummer to see that. It really is. Yeah. But again, you can't say it might be a little bit entertaining than seeing the WBC Cruiserweight title being on the line multiple times with Noir and Badu Jack. So they've had their moments with the belt. And even just like everyone else from multitude of other champions. So I got to give them credit for what credit's due. Oh, yeah, and speaking about the WBC belt, we even have a little bit of other assortments going on in the heavyweight, because the heavyweight belt for heavyweight boxing has had some new ideal faces. Now, considering Richard Torres is out of it, he lost his professional fight against Frank Sanchez, which is shocking enough. But another opponent at the time, which some people could believe should have been a good champion, is from the country of Belgium. Even though this guy was born in a place called Côte d'Ivoire, which I'm going to have to look up what that name is. His name is Riyad Murray, and as of right now, just a few or so days ago, this guy, who was a former WBA Cruiserweight Championship regular, is now a legit major champion. So the country of Ivory Coast, which is the Côte of d'Ivoire, which is actually the republic of the country on the southern coast of West Africa, is where Riyad Murray was born. But now he lives in Belgium. Went to his country, and Kevin Lorana, who was WBC Bridgeweight champion at the time, went 12 rounds the distance with Riyad Murray. Unfortunately, Kevin Lorana, I guess he just couldn't recover from his career. Even his first pro fight he had in 2014 against Johnny Muller might have suffered him a little bit, but a close fight. That is until Daniel Dubois screwed him over, because thanks to referee Howard Foster for the regular title back in 2022, and then he lost against fighters like Justice Hooney, and then had a lucky title to take his title for a Bridgeweight championship away from Lawrence Okali when he went up to heavyweight to become the Bridgeweight champion. He did defeat someone else last year in May, which was an easy fight until he lost against Lawrence Okali, and how boring of a fight that was because he couldn't do one single round of a fight. Yeah, this fight right here, he did a lot better, but again, I think this is the end of Kevin Lorana's career. He did good. He did what he tried to do in boxing. He had a title fight. He had title fights, whether it was minor weight, bridgerweight, and the heavyweight, so he did okay, even though he did start losing the multitude of some rounds in the fight. He did come out in assortment of a few rounds I had for him. I had the scores 117 to 111. One judge had it like that as well. The other had 116 to 112, and the other 115 to 113. Given Riyad Murray a victory, now he's ranked number 23 in a heavyweight, but unfortunately, as said before, he is the Bridgeweight champion. It also states here on BoxRec, stated that he has been suspended by the Belgian Boxing Federation until June the 17th this year. So whatever happened to him, we might not know. But all in all, congratulations to Riyad Murray. He won the belt on the 30th. So, yeah, May the 30th brought in a lot of championship belts. Not bad. Not bad. Okay, so now we should talk about another couple other topics. So, like I said before, guys, this is just going to be like a 40-minute episode because I do have other stuff I'm actually going to do. And because it's almost 12 o'clock right now, so I'm thinking about leaving in a matter of time. So my next updated videos I'm going to record after this episode is going to be the history of the WBO heavyweight championship, and then after that I'm gonna record another episode later on, which will be the history of the IBO championship belt in the heavyweight. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna review each heavyweight fight. I might not review it from start to finish. I'll just go through it. If there's no footage, I'm just gonna whiz by it, talk about it, talk about my opinions. I've already done the story of the road to the undisputed heavyweight championship, which was a 7-part series talking about the WBO, IBF, WBC, the WBA Super, and WBA Regular. I did a 2-part episode on that. The lineal weight belt. I think I did the Ring Magazine belt and the IBO belt. Still, there are moments in time where I think I did. Still, I had to do a 2-part episode of the WBA. So, and I talked about that. I started all of those episodes 2 years ago from starting it from after Lennox Lewis finally defeated Evander Holyfield for the 3-belt era, all the way up to the Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk 1 fight, which was May 2 years ago. It was fun. It made me a little bit entertainment, and I got through it for what it was. So technically, I'm just going to review each of the titles that were in the 1980s. Well, the WBO started in late 88 or 89, just like the IBO, but the IBO never had a title until 92. So I'm going to review all the fights that happened before the Lennox Lewis and Holyfield 2 fight from start to finish by the end of the 90s until we get to the 21st century. And I'll end it there for now because I just want to have my opinions about the boxers we will talk about and even have my opinion because I do have a weird prediction feeling that one of the organizations might go out of business. Still, the Lord works in mysterious ways, so who knows? So yeah, I'm going to go through this episode as quickly as I can. I don't have a lot to talk about, but I do have a couple interesting topics to go through. But before we do that, we might as well take a 1-minute water break. I'm going to get a drink of water for just a moment. So give me a second. You always have to take some water break once in a while. It is school vacation, so go out there and have a good time. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Love it. Anyway, with all that being said, I'm just going to wait until we get to the 15-minute mark just to take a little bit of a breather, if you don't mind. Crazy. Okay, so I might as well talk about this one first, and talk about the Alexander Usyk thing last, which might take about 15 minutes. I can get through 40 minutes of that. All right. So, so of course, if people have been paying attention to professional bowling or the PBA, you might already know that it's sad that the season is over for what it is. So 2026 has been one wild year when it comes to punting, and just throwing everything you got right into the center of the stage. I'll give credit. Even though they only have 16 titles, two doubles, and it is upsetting that they don't got the PBA Tour Finals anymore, and they don't got the PBA playoffs, which would have been good because they would have given us 20 tour titles. It would have been really interesting for what it is. Now, of course, this is my topic to talk about just for a couple things about the PBA. First of all, who is the player of the year? Well, here's the thing. You should say EJ Tackett is, because he's been on a roll this year for his utter dominance. Thing is, here's a problem. Now, I hope the PBA didn't forget about this, because I have a feeling they did. So it might create controversy. EJ Tackett has been player of the year 4 straight times: 2016, 2023, 2024, and 2025. He's held off records of highest average 4 times in a row in 2022, 23, 24, and 25. And he's going to do it for a 5th time this year, which means that he should be player of the year. Here's the thing. When you look up player of the year, you have to pay attention to 1987. Now, in 1987, Marshall Holman, who was still a prime person, like he was 33 years old, which doesn't mean that he's old, but for some reason it just seemed like he wasn't on a roll when it comes to bowling anymore. Like when he turned 30 years old, he was winning some title like once in a while, and then comes out, wins a couple more titles the next year, which was the US Open again. He becomes the TOC for a second time in his career, then the next year in 86. And then 1987, he comes out guns blazing, throwing in every single tournament he's been through. Now, in Wikipedia, on his Wikipedia page, it stated, quote, Marshall was named Player of the Year in 87. Despite not winning a title, however, he did lead the 1987 tour in average and a few other statistical categories. This would turn out to be the only year a player with a title, without a title, won Player of the Year. A PBA rule change now requires at least one title for a player to be put on the Player of the Year ballot in a given season. So here's the thing. Now, of course, in the start, like in 2007 to 2008 or 2009 to 2010 season, in the 3 seasons before they were doing 1 seasons of 2 years, until they went back to a full calendar year in 2014, bowlers from Chris Barnes to Wes Malott became Player of the Year in their rights. And Walter Ray Williams barely became Player of the Year in 2010 in his last title winnings for a 7th time, because they used to do a points distribution for points, which was known as the system which instituted point systems only determined by winners. And even though the system did have moments when Walter Ray barely edged out winning by 2 points in a system, they only lasted it for 3 seasons until the 2010 and 11 season. The player vote was again part of the process, and they haven't changed it since. Can you imagine if Chris Barnes, because I think Chris Barnes barely did win a title in 2008 and 2007 because he had problems. He lost the TOC by a 53 pin differential on Michael Haugen Jr. He barely won a title that year, but let's just say he didn't. And he was in the points lead. Can you imagine that? You were the player with the most points of a season and you didn't win a title? That would be ridiculous. Luckily, they got rid of that, but you get the point. So the player votes are already voting, in my opinion, that EJ Tackett is the player. The problem is, I don't know how many people remember Marshall Holman and his player of the year win. And by the way, did Marshall Holman continue winning titles after that? He had 20 PBA titles by the end of 86. Unfortunately, when he was actually like 34 years old, he went to Venice, Florida to win his 21st title, and he never won a title again until 1996, an Ebonat Classic at 42 years old. And that was it. Ridiculous, yeah. Just makes you wonder how your prime can get into your head. Like you're in your 50s. So here's the thing. We already know that EJ Tackett, he's won the PBA World Championship Major 3 straight times. 23, 24, and 25. He's won it 3 times in a row, for crying out loud, and he's the number 1 seed. He goes in here, and let's just say that the world champ, I think Chris Vi is the number 2 seed for the world championship. Like, I'm assuming that, because for competition wise, it's turning into a ridiculous show. And by the way, I love that the World Series of Bowling actually allowed them to put in the old seniors in their 50s to be back on TV. I did love that when they actually finally put them back on TV. So that is one plus I'll give to the PBA this year. At least they brought in back in the old PBA players in their 50s. I was happy that Tom Hess was back on television, and seeing his emotions get back to him and finally win a title again. It wasn't a tour title, but still a title nevertheless. So happy to see him there. Yes, Chris Vi is the number 2 seed. Can you imagine if Chris Vi wins match number 3 out of the 9 seeds, and then comes in and takes on EJ Tackett in the major and wins? Can you imagine how crazy that would be? Like, don't get me wrong. That would bring in some surprising facts for what bowling is. Because that would lead to EJ Tackett not being player of the year, unless if he actually gets a shot next week. Because, so here's the thing. June the 13th, we're 11 days away from it. We'll make that 10 days. The AMF PBA World Championship will take place. They got the Brooklyn Park in MN of Mississippi, I guess. MN. I think it was MN, Minnesota. Yes, Minnesota and Brooklyn Park. They're doing the qualifying through Thursday and such, the title match and match play. And then in Allen Park, Michigan, they're into the play-in and the round and the finals, which will be the stepladder. So CBS Sports will be live on the stepladder from number 9 seed to number 5. For whoever wins will enter in the other 4 seeds for other 4 players from the 4 to 1 seed. And also, when that's over, they're going to go live on the finals of CBS Plus for the last 4 matches. So whatever happens, someone will win $100,000 and take in the grand prize. So that is going to be interesting. And after that, a week later on the 20th, they'll go to Bethlehem. They're going to do a 4-day tournament of the PBA Norm Duke Open. They're also going to do the PBA Elite League Battle of the Brands, which I'm not into that. But on the 21st of June, a day later, they're going to do the Norm Duke, where they have the squads of players. If EJ doesn't go through that, that's going to be the end of the season. Yes, they're going to do the mixed doubles for the PBA, PWBA working together, and EJ Tackett is pretty good at that. They're going to go to Houston, Texas on August the 2nd for that. And if he doesn't win that, he has to go to Heisenberg, Sweden for the Storm Lucky Larson's Masters on August the 21st to perform until August the 31st. And if he doesn't win a title then, it's over. So he has 4 more chances to win one of those titles. I don't like him to see Player of the Year, but if he does get through this, who knows? We're 11 days away from that, and I just don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to see him win because he's won 3 times in a row, but again, it is going to generate some interesting facts to who's going to win as we speak. By the way, one other thing before we talk about the Alexander Usyk show and what his next performances will be. Okay, here's the thing. Speaking about PBA, the PWBA, again, the PWBA has brought in some interesting moments. Sinwei Jane just won her first tournament after a 2-year hiatus. Another fighter from Singapore just won the Northern Open on May the 9th. The USBC Queens is won by a woman named Erin McCarthy. She won $60,000. Not good. Stephanie Johnson won out the Summer Series in the PBA in Rochester and in the Gates, New York on the 28th, which also had 2 other titles, and they're all on Bull friggin' TV again. Shannon Pulowski came back to win her 7th title in her career on the 30th in the Summer Series of the Bull TV Open. And then a day later, just yesterday on June the 1st, a Singapore woman named Chiri Tan just won her 6th title this year, or 6th title in her career, in the Lilac City Open, also in the gates of New York. So we're 6 titles into this, and there's 6 more titles to go for the PWBA. On June the 6th in Columbus, Ohio, they're going to do the Columbus Open for $18,000. And then on June the 16th or June the 11th to June the 16th, they're going to do the qualify for the U.S. Women's Open. And then they're going to take a break. They're going to take a long hiatus from that. And then they won't come back until the Breast Cancer Awareness Mixed Doubles on August the 2nd. They're going to start the tournament on the 30th of July. And then they're going to go to Parma Heights, Ohio on August the 12th, where they're going to hold a tournament on the 13th of August, known as the PBA Tour Championship Week of the Pepsi Open. And then 2 days later, on the 15th, they'll do the PBA Cleveland Open. And then after that, on the 18th, 3 days later, they're going to give away $30,000 for a major for the PWBA Tour Championship, where it's going to be having the 24-player starting field, including all 2026 titleists, with PWBA members only, plus highest points earning among non-winners for the top $30,000 prize. Man, that's crazy. Again, $60,000 for the win. It's weird that Sinwei Jane is not on top of her game. It is upsetting that a lot of these PWBA players have one good season and then they flop hard next year and they don't do good again. That's what upsets me. It upsets me that we have 12 PWBA titles this year, and the problem is 3 of them are on national television for CBS Sports and the other 9 are on Bull TV. So that's just a bummer, because what are the odds of any of these being 300 games? Like Liz Johnson once did that a few years ago and scored a 300 for her last title. All I can say about this, I'm done talking about all of this. So, again, it is ridiculous that they're already halfway through the season and they're going to take another hiatus. So, it upsets me that women's bowling is not getting popular. It's just becoming a waste of time. And that just upsets me. Okay, so let's just end this episode with Alexander Usyk. So Alexander Usyk has been through a lot of crazy stuff. There's nothing much I can say about this guy. For what reason? So there's this is just a lot of crazy stuff. I don't like to repeat my stuff again. I don't like to repeat this, but this is new. So I always talk about how Alexander Usyk had 2 fights left after he defeated Fury for a second time in December of 2024, and then came on and he announced to himself and everyone else, saying that even on British TV, on The Ring magazine, when he was sitting with Daniel Dubois after the push incident in Wembley Stadium, stated that he had 2 fights left. And then sometime later, before the fight, he said after Dubois, then 2 fights left. And then in December, he calls out Deontay Wilder. And for some reason, I'm only going to assume that Wilder's team pulled him out of the fight because they just wanted to see how good Wilder was going to do, because his Tyrell Herndon fight wasn't going to be that much. So if he takes on Derek Chisora and wins, he might get a bigger shot for Alexander Usyk. That's not what Usyk saw in his mind. They just thought he ducked. Bad idea. And then, believing when he defeated Dubois in July, I believe he had 1 fight left, he calls out Rico Verhoeven. Now, at first, a couple months ago, I thought to myself, well, if Usyk can defeat Rico Verhoeven in less than 6 rounds, or maybe a few, I would almost have to say Usyk has 1 fight left in him. Because I said to myself, Usyk has 1 fight left in him this year. He calls out Rico, and I looked up the guy's resume, understood what his background was, and I'm thinking to myself, if Usyk can beat him quickly like he did to Dubois, I could say that Usyk has a half fight left in him. Not 1 fight, half fight left in him. But what we saw 2 weeks ago was not the case. Here's the problem. He goes online in the month of April on interview 1 month before the fight and goes online, quote, I have 3 fights left. After I beat Verhoeven, 2 fights. The winner of Wardley and Dubois. And then Greedy Belly Fury. At this moment, I'm thinking to myself, why is Usyk doing this to himself? I just don't understand this. Is he trying to be the greatest, or is he trying to go straight into the lake of fire like Muhammad Ali did when he proved that he was the greatest of all time? But did he said that to God, or did he not even know that God was the greatest? I don't want to get into the religious of it, but I'm just scared for Usyk because I don't know if Usyk's popularity is getting inside his head, or he's just getting lucky to get these paydays for a fight for a kickboxer. Well, guess what? He goes 11 rounds with him, wins by round 11, and yes, I did put my money on Verhoeven because something told me that Usyk was not going to go easy on him. He was going to go mega easy on him. And Verhoeven wasn't. And my, oh my, how right I was. Thank you to Mark Lyson for giving Usyk the win. Because 11 rounds in the fight says 1 fight left. Now Usyk has 0 fights left. Now, just to let you viewers know, that's the new thing I'm about to point out. That was actually the new thing I'm pointing out. That this is all the new stuff I'm talking about. The other stuff, after talking about he had 3 fights left, was the old stuff that I've talked about before. So, again, sorry for repeating that stuff, but again, that's what I'm assuming. So Usyk barely goes through 11 rounds, almost went to a 12th round fight, and barely defeats Rico Verhoeven. Now Rico Verhoeven is stating he's calling out Moses Atama. And you know what's crazy? Just recently, Hasim Ratman, former heavyweight champion, is now coming back saying that he wants to make a comeback, and Counterpunch Boxing made a video of that. And then some hours later, Kurt DeVille from Counterpunch makes another video, quote, Vladimir Klitschko wants to make a return. Again. So now I'm thinking to myself, and because Floyd Mayweather, now he wants to have a rematch with Manny Pacquiao this year, it just makes you wonder why boxing is so greedy when it comes to money. Forget about the money, man. Like, make as much money as you can, walk away from the sport, and I think that's what Alexander Usyk should do. Even YouTuber Liam Gull made a video on the 27th of May talking about Alexander Krusyak, former promoter of Usyk, and he believes that Usyk should retire urgently. Now, with only a few minutes left of this podcast, because I just want to go outside and take a breath of fresh air, this is my final thought about Usyk. I just don't want to see this type of waste of time going to waste. Like, here's the thing. Usyk is this close from surpassing Vladimir Klitschko by being the oldest world heavyweight champion as a unified boxer, and is for holding unified belts. Now, of course, in 94, around 44, 45 years old, there was talk that George Foreman did defeat Michael Moore for WBA and IBF, but then it stated that he vacated the WBA belt a lot sooner, believing, so they never recognized Foreman for being a unified champion, just for being IBF, because he fought against an unknown ranked fighter named Axel Schultz, and then he got the belt vacated away from him from June of 95, meaning that he was 45 years old, or 46, when he retired the belts. The problem was he was still a lineal weight champion when he was 48 years old until the later part of 97 when Shannon Briggs defeated him, and that was it. So, pretty much, that really doesn't matter. And by the way, Usyk did surpass Jersey Joe Walcott for being the oldest undisputed champion, around 38 years old last year ago. He did vacate the belt, the WBO belt, away from Fabio Wardley just about a month or a month and a half after surpassing Jersey Joe Walcott's age for being the oldest. So, and now this year he's going to surpass Vladimir Klitschko for being the oldest. So, what are my thoughts here? My thoughts are, if Usyk is going to hold on to the titles for a few more months until the fall, or maybe hold on to them until the month of April, depending if he's going to vacate the belts away or something, or even, because they did state that he had a 180-day extension for the belts to go on the line to fight with Agit Kabayel, because IBF and even the WBC and WBA, I've heard reports that they're putting out extensions for Usyk. And by the way, in February last year ago, in 2025, the WBA organized a 24-month extension for Usyk to hold on to his title until February of 2027. So if he's not going to fight a mandatory opponent like his former rival of Murat Gassiev, then he might as well give that belt away. But if the WBA does nothing about it, then this is just turning into a corruption of stupidity, because it's just such a waste to see that type of incompetence. But you know what? You guys lay it on the line. It's up to you to decide what you believe in. All I know is Usyk is going to take another year off from this and until he's 40. It's not good. And I'm going to talk about Agit Kabayel and his story. I'm actually going to make another episode of Agit Kabayel from the start of his pro career. I'm going to do a resume of his entire career from start to finish, because I think he's going to be the most unluckiest heavyweight, more unluckier than Zhili Zhang. And I'm going to explain about that why in the next episode. But we're already going to the 40-minute mark, and my legs are already sweating right now, so I guess it's time to leave. So all I can say is just wait. Just wait and see what happens. That's all I have to say. So, thank you for watching, and see you next time as we review the story of the WBO and the IBO Heavyweight Championship of the 1990s. So, see you then.